want me to fall. They want to see if I make it. With my back against the wall, put my head to the sky. No, I won't let them break me. I got great expectations. Great expectations.
Yeah, all the stairs and all the glares, they waiting on them. And all the weight from all the hate is gaining on them. The intensity as it rises, nobody can disguise it. It's like he got fire in his eyelids. The crowd is roaring, it's so enormous, his blood is boiling. His head is down and he's focused, he wishes they'd ignore him. Who in their right mind wants to let his light shine? He ain't even in his prime, pressure of a lifetime. He's standing steady, head sweaty, maybe nervous but ready. The skepticism lies heavy, he's about to make it petty. He got his fam on his back, not to carry like Chevy. So much on his plate, he hopes the repercussions ain't deadly, but he ain't.
Guys, welcome to another episode of The Right Way Show, live on The Right Way Sports Network's YouTube channel. I'm your host, CEO of The Right Way Sports Network, Malik Wright. Joined with the usual cast, we got Jake Circus in the building, the Cali kid, but he's in Missouri today. How's it going, Jake?
It's going great. I'm very excited to be here, and special guest. Very excited to have you on the show.
Absolutely. We got Daniel Alameda, the true Cali kid, the first
ever
Cali kid. How's it going, Daniel?
Amazing, man. Excited for this. Excited to interview Hue Jackson.
Max Marrero, what's going on, buddy?
Good as always. I'm happy to be here, back at home, back in Miami, Florida. So you already know.
Gotta love it. And we got the one and only, the legend, Hue Jackson. Hue Jackson in the building. How's it going, Hugh?
They're doing great, man. First of all, it's great to see all you guys and all the diversity here, and everybody's a little bit of every place. So obviously, Malik, you've done a great job of putting the team together.
I appreciate that, Hugh. First and foremost, guys, before we get this thing started, want to make sure you guys follow us on Instagram at TWSN, follow us on Twitter, TWSN, Facebook, TWSN, download the TWSN mobile app. Yes, we have a mobile app. Download it where you can get all the up-to-date stories and catch up with the news. We got a lot of stuff going on, and my main man Jake's going to be covering the Senior Bowl this year coming up, so we got a lot of great content coming up here on TWSN. With that being said, guys, we are going to get the show started. And Hugh, I'm going to let this, listen, I grew up a Bengals fan, right? I grew up a huge Cincinnati Bengals fan. 2015 was probably one of the best years of my life. I'm not going to lie. The offense was playing at a high level that year. And it was just, honestly, we really felt like that was the year for us. But I have a question for you, and I've always wanted to ask you this question. A little bit off topic before I let these guys get into it and ask their questions. John Gruden, right? You have a specific play that John Gruden calls the Star Wars formation. And I don't know if you know what play I'm talking about, but I got a picture right here for you. And I want to ask you first and foremost, what is this formation? What do you actually call it? I mean, you got two guards, a center, you got offensive tackles out wide. I've always wanted to ask you that question because to me, growing up, right, I'm a defensive guy, right? That's why I loved Marvin Lewis, the head coach of the Bengals. I'm a defensive guy. I just was like, I've never seen anybody have an offense like that. Then I saw it in Madden, and everybody started. What do you call that? And how'd you come up with it?
That's Emery and Henry.
Emery and Henry.
We just, again, you have to do different things in the National Football League to unsettle these defensive coordinators.
Yeah.
If you just line up against Marvin Lewis and do traditional things, they probably don't. And so I wanted to make sure people had things to really think about. And Malik, I appreciate you bringing that up because people used to always say in 2015, I was one of the most innovative coaches.
You were.
Then all of a sudden, that went out the window. Then it's like I didn't know what I was doing. I still got all that. I just got to have the players to do it, right? I mean,
absolutely.
The players and the system and all those things to do it. And I think people forgot about that.
And I want to ask you, how special was that year 2015, man? How much fun was it calling the offense that year? You had guys like Mohamed Sanu, you had Marvin Jones, you had AJ Green, you might have had Hawkins, you might not have, I'm not sure. But I know you had Hill, you had Gio. How fun was it to call the offense that year? I mean, it was honestly amazing.
It was a lot of fun. And you said it earlier. I think it was the year that we thought we were going to go to the Super Bowl. Obviously, Andy gets hurt, and that was the difference, in my opinion. Not that A.J. McCarron didn't do great, but Andy getting hurt in that Pittsburgh game really kind of turned the tide for us a little bit. Almost felt like Carson Palmer getting hurt. You know, if you look at that, they were 10 years apart.
Yeah.
You know, Carson in 05, here was this situation in 2015 with Andy. I mean, it was both those years we thought we had chances to had a good team and good enough team to really play for the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. I'm gonna let some of these guys get in here and ask because I'm such a fanboy right now. Jake, I'll let you get in here and ask some questions.
Yeah, so I'll start with I'm also a diehard Bengals fan, just like Malik. So there's a reason I'm here. We're both pretty diehard Bengals fans. 2015 was easily the best year for me as a Bengals fan. I'll never forget the year, and there were some definite tears after that January night. I will admit, but you were there earlier on with Marvin, with Chad. But I want to talk about to start. So Chad Johnson and then AJ Green, two transformative, two legendary Bengal wide receivers. What similarities did they have for you as a coach? Because you were the wide receivers coach when Chad was there, and then the offensive coordinator for when AJ was there. But what similarities did you see in them?
I think the difference, the similarities were they both were good players, really good players. Both leaders of their football teams, both guys, they needed to play well in order for the team to win. So they both had that, but they were total different personalities. Chad was just a crazy guy to coach, and I say that in a good way.
Yeah.
I love him like a son. I still have an unbelievable relationship with him. We were just on a podcast the other day on I Am Athlete. So we have an unbelievable, like I said, relationship. But he's like the Energizer Bunny. To me, he put Cincinnati on the map. Because of the way he played and also the way he had his celebration. So he really brought the magic basically into the National Football League when it came to celebrations. Everybody started trying to one-up him as it started. So I thought he was the Pied Piper of that. When I think of AJ's just he's a hard worker, different personality, doesn't say much, but boy, puts in the work, extremely, extremely talented, and needed the football to feel like he was really owning things. But I coached two of the best receivers in Bengals history, in my opinion.
Agreed. Danny, I'm gonna let you get in here and ask some questions.
Yes, sir. Hugh, you coached for the Bengals, the Browns, the Raiders, all crazy fan bases. What impact do the fans have inside the locker room on yourself as a coach? How much do these fans really impact you guys?
They impact the team, the coaches tremendously. It's really amazing. All those particular fan bases were unbelievable.
Yeah.
But nothing like driving into a Raiders game in Oakland, because you're going to get some contact high.
Oh yeah.
The marijuana was flowing. Let's just keep it real. I mean, as you got in the car and as you drove in, somebody might have knocked on your window and say, "You want to hit this?" Okay, that's just the way it was. I mean,
yeah.
Unbelievable fans. Raider Nation is off the chart. The black hole. I mean, and they love their Raiders, and that's what I will always remember and take it to heart. Obviously, you got the dog pound in Cleveland, and they were very passionate, and obviously they're doing some great things this year, so they're making a comeback. But the fans impact players and coaches tremendously. But I will be the first to say it, and I don't run from it. There's nothing like the Raider fans. Nothing.
I definitely respect that. I want to follow up with you. How was it, working for a guy like Al Davis?
Well, he was that guy was misunderstood, in my opinion. Obviously, he's an icon. People thought that the game had passed him by. That's not true. He was the defensive coordinator of the team I was the head coach of, because he ran the defense. That was Al. That's who Al was. But he understood football. I mean, he could talk it. He could draw it. He slept it. He ate it. And he was a leader of that organization through and through. And I really enjoyed my time with him more than anything. I hated to see him pass, because I truly believe if he hadn't have, I still would have been in Oakland.
Yeah, no, I definitely could feel that in it. And even what you accomplished in Oakland, I feel like that. I think I feel like the NFL is so quick to forget things. They're so quick to forget things. But we're gonna touch a lot on that as we go on with the show. Max, do you have any questions that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, Coach. So obviously, we touched on Oakland, your time in Oakland, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, right? So obviously, those are three very different franchises. Right now, we see the Raiders now in Vegas, the Browns, really doing well and fighting for a playoff spot. what would you say are the similarities and the differences between the cultures in those different franchises? And do you think it's something that, being a part of or being a franchise in Oakland versus being a franchise in Cincinnati, does that affect it, geography? Or do you think it's the players you have around you? What would you say are the key differences and similarities?
I think it's the key differences is where those organizations have been, the history of the organizations. All those organizations you mentioned have not really won at a high level other than the Raiders. The Raiders have won Super Bowls in the past. They had something to really talk about. When you think of Cincinnati, they've been to one Super Bowl. They don't have, that's talk about. When you talk about the Browns, that was a long time ago. It was Jim Brown, 1965. You know what I mean? So what people know and understand is today, and when people look at those teams, the Raiders hadn't been doing very well. Neither has the Browns, So that was really different, and that's what makes it different. But the one thing I will say is every organization is different. You're talking about the Baltimore. I mean, you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, who are run by mom pops. This is a pops organization.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown runs the organization with his family. When you think of Cleveland Browns, well, that's Jimmy Haslam. That's not anybody that was connected to the Browns. So that's different. When you think about the Oakland Raiders, that was Al Davis all the way. I mean, that was his team. He ran the team. It's different now, but for so many years, when you talked about the Raiders, you've seen Al Davis, you've seen white suit, white towel. That's just the way it was. So I think that's where the history, the tradition of those organizations were totally different. But at the end of the day, it's still about getting players and having players play at a high level. The Raiders have had some great players. The Bengals have had some great players.
Right.
And I think we all know the Cleveland Browns have had too.
So I'm going to ask you a different question as we start to frame your time in Cincinnati. What was your connection like to the city of Cincinnati, to Mike Brown, to Marvin Lewis, right? It seems like you always found your way back to Cincinnati. So I've got to ask you, what was the connection there? What did you love about your time in Cincinnati? And a question that was asked to me to ask you, would you ever come back?
Well, I'd come back tomorrow if I could. I mean, there's no question about that. When I think about my time in Cincinnati, I grew probably the most there. Some of my most special relationships were built in Cincinnati. Some of my most special relationships in the organization were built in Cincinnati. I think every organization is built on trust. I think Mike Brown trusted me. I think Katie Blackburn trusted me. I think Troy Blackburn trusted me that I was going to always put the best foot forward when it came to players, and they were well coached, and I was going to give them an opportunity to be successful. And I think they appreciated that. Now, they did so many unbelievable things for me after leaving and going to Baltimore, then to Oakland, and having a chance to come back. That normally doesn't happen. I coached on defense.
Yeah.
I was an 8-8 coach who lost, and you can go look at the annuals, and most 8-8 coaches don't get fired.
Right.
But Davis had died, so I understood it. But Marvin put me on defense. I come over on offense, and then I get elevated to the coordinator and win coach of the year. That doesn't happen in a lot of ways. Right. I go to Cleveland, I get fired. Who brings me back? That family, that relationship with Marvin Lewis, that relationship with that family.
Right.
So I'm always going to be very fond of them. And I'm very fond of the city and the fans. And I would hope that the city and the fans knew that if Hue Jackson was on staff there, we're going to find a way to win. I
love that.
Yeah.
And coach, I got to be honest with you. You. When me and you were texting back and forth, right, and we were talking about this interview, one thing I loved about you, man, you said, nothing's off limits. We'll talk about anything. And I appreciate that, right? That's the first thing you look for, especially in a coach. You want a leader. You want a leader of men, and that's something that I think you excel in. I think you were able to create these unique relationships, whether it would be with guys like Chad, guys like AJ. Doesn't matter who it was. You were able to create these relationships. So, Coach, I'm going to ask you some tough questions now, right? Or some may perceive to be tough questions.
Sure.
But to you, I don't think that they are, right? So first and foremost, I want to ask you, right, there's this notion out there that Mike Brown, for instance, does not want to win, or he does not want to spend the money there is to win, or the Bengals are cheap. Can you set the record straight about the Bengals organization, coming from someone who's coached there, who has developed such a close relationship with that family? Tell us, what is it like?
Biggest crop of crap in the world. He wants to win more than anybody.
Yeah.
And he would do anything he thought that needed to be done to win. You go back and look at those teams. I mean, we had some really good teams from '05
Yeah.
through, and then you lose a few guys. That's going to happen in the National Football League. And sometimes things just don't go right. I know everybody looked at their spending. I'm talking about the Bengals this past season in free agency.
Yeah.
And they spent a lot of money, but what, 2 or 3 of those players are not even playing.
Right.
You know, so what's the difference? So I'm sure Mike saw it as, we have draft capital, let's draft and build through the draft. And if we can find, and normally if you go look at the history, they normally would find 1 or 2 guys to impact the team in free agency, not 5, not 6, because all the data says that doesn't work.
Right.
And that's all he did. He used what everybody else was doing to his advantage.
Right.
It created winning. That's all it did. But I think they've gotten away. You know, obviously he's not running the organization right now from what I know. And because when I think of the Bengals, every year they're going to draft a corner in the first round. There's going to be a corner drafted because they had great corners. I mean, we had 6 first-round corners when I was there, you know, regardless of where they came from.
Newman, Pac-Man. I mean, the list goes on, right? I mean,
Newman. I mean,
Leon.
So my point is that there was a blueprint there, and I think sometimes that starts to change when other people start getting involved. It doesn't make them wrong and anybody else right. I think the Bengals just got to go back to being who they are. Obviously, they got it right with the quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But I think they got to make sure they surround that guy with the right people so he'll have a chance to lead them to where I think he can, which is the Super Bowl.
Coach, you should see some of these comments right now. People are saying, come home, Uncle Hugh. Come on home. Come on home. Before I let these guys jump in here and ask a lot of questions, because I know they got to ask a lot of questions, I wanted to specifically ask you this question. There was this rumor report out, right? It said that Hue Jackson had the opportunity to succeed Marvin Lewis in the year 2018. Mike Brown had approached you with a succession plan. And I also know the New York Giants were very fond of you, right? The New York Giants were very interested in you. So I'm curious, why'd you choose Cleveland over New York or versus staying in Cincinnati?
Well, because first of all, and the reason why I left Cincinnati, I'm very honest and transparent, is because I did not want my best friend looking over his shoulder, ever thinking I was undermining him.
Right.
When you are in that situation and you know you're the head coach in waiting, and I just don't think that's a good position to be in. And my relationship with Marvin was more important than a job. When I can get another job, it was more important. And I say that because that relationship allowed me to come back after things fell apart. And if I had did that wrong, that wouldn't have happened, in my opinion. Why did I choose Cleveland instead of New York? Because Cleveland I truly thought that it was gonna we were gonna go change Cleveland. You know, that was the big fish in the situation. You win there, you build your legacy. And
definitely. Definitely.
It was the AFC North, which I knew well, you know, and so I figured I can go there and make this happen. But obviously it didn't happen, doesn't matter why. Right. At the end of the day, I've said this several times, I wish I never would have left, but I wish I would have understood the dynamics of how we could have all worked together without me feeling like I was going to be intruding on who arguably is a really important man in my life, not just as a coach, but also as a person, because that meant more to me than anything.
Love it, Coach. You definitely can get in here.
Yeah, Coach. So you obviously really close with Marvin, and then Zach Taylor now, who has been under, new young coach, came in last year, offensive mind, just like yourself, replacing Marvin, who's a defensive coach. And his culture this year has really come under scrutiny. Lots of players have come out, been adamant on Twitter that they're upset Carlos Dunlap gets moved to Seattle. If you were in the same room with Zach Taylor right now, what advice would you give him? Because I think you were in a similar situation in Cleveland to what Zach Taylor is right now. So what advice would you have for Zach Taylor right now?
I really wasn't in that situation. I did have a quarterback that had a big mouth, but I wasn't in that situation. I didn't have a whole bunch of players.
Right.
When I'm here, I didn't mean it like that, but I think what happens with players, if you're not transparent with them, if you're not very forthcoming, and again, players are used to routine. Players want honesty, they want discipline, and they want routine. When you start changing those things, any one of those three, it's going to be a problem.
Absolutely.
Throw in that you're not winning, then it's a real problem. Okay, so somehow you got to make sure that that relationship from head coach to player is very transparent, is very clear. They have to see the vision, but they also have to see progress. If they don't, then they start to turn. And that's just what it is. And so I'm not there to say what the conversations are or what they could have been. I just know if a coach is in this situation, you have to own it as the coach first.
Absolutely.
And if you don't own it, then the players are going to make you own it because they're not going to be a part of what it is that you're selling.
Yeah, Coach, after your time with the Browns and the Raiders, obviously there's a lot of misconceptions about yourself in the media, with fans. What are some of the misconceptions that you want to set the record straight on, or you feel like people aren't getting the right Hue Jackson about?
Well, I think everybody is, is at the bottom line, people create narratives. I don't get I can say what I want to say, but people create narratives, whether it was Hard Knocks or when you lose, you lose. You got to own it. I mean, I lost, but at the same time, I wasn't trying to lose. And I think people go look at our team and really dig into it. They would find out more about what we had to coach those first 2 years there in Cleveland. Okay. Well, Hugh always complain about what coach doesn't want to win.
Right.
You don't take a job to lose. You're trying to win. I don't like losing. I'm not a loser. I had never lost in my life. I mean, and it bothered me that people thought it was okay. So at the end of the day, I am just as upset about some of the things get said because people don't understand that I'm very passionate about football. It's my life. I love leading men. I know I can coach offense with anybody in the National Football League.
Absolutely.
I know I can get a group of men to follow me, but it's like anything. People have to put you in position to win. You don't just get to win by yourself.
Right.
You got to be put in position to win. And so everything's got to be aligned correctly. There's got to be great collaboration between everybody in order for things to happen. And I will say this again, and I've said it all the time. I love general managers, and every team should have a general manager because it's too big of a job for a coach to do, to be the head coach and the general manager. But I will say this. If you're not trying to win for the coach, it doesn't work. He's coaching the team. So you need to get him what he needs to win, not what you think you need to win.
It's a partnership.
It's like that. Then nobody's going to win. It's going to fail because if the GM sees it different than the head coach, that marriage is not going to work.
Absolutely. I know Max had some questions for you.
Yeah, Coach. I kind of want to talk about that loudmouth quarterback you referred to really quickly. So you guys took him, the Cleveland Browns, #1 overall over the likes of Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Josh Rosen. What made him stand out as a prospect? I mean, we all know he was an incredible player in college, shotgun quarterback for Oklahoma, but we know the personality, he had that same sort of flair, that personality, the loudmouth, to repeat that term, personality going into the league. So is this something
that's what Cleveland needed. When you go back, remember they had a jersey that had all those names on the back of all the guys that played quarterback in Cleveland. That would not faze Baker Mayfield one bit. If anything, he's going to make sure that his name doesn't go up there that way. You got to understand people and what an organization needs. And if you put somebody in there who doesn't have that kind of mentality, that kind of I don't give a darn, then that guy is going to fall right into the same trap as all those other quarterbacks because it's pressure. And you got to be able to handle it. And he can handle it. I truly believe that. That was one of the parts of it. The other part is I think the guy's a good quarterback. Right. I think he's extremely accurate. He can throw. He can make any throw in football. He's tough-minded. He's tough. We've all seen him take shots in games that most guys don't get up from sometimes. This guy is a football player. And I've said it earlier in the year. They just need to do the right things with him. And they have. And they're 9-4 because of it. So at the end of the day, he's proven to be exactly what I thought he was when we drafted him. He was the first pick of the draft. He's playing extremely well. Cleveland is finally winning, and Baker should get his due because he's doing a good job.
So Coach, I think there's a misconception, right? Some people will hear you say these positive things about Baker Mayfield. Mm-hmm. It doesn't shock me because you always spoke highly of him everywhere in every interview that you've done. But it would shock a lot of people because the same appreciation, the same love that you show for Baker Mayfield, it doesn't feel like he showed it back.
Oh,
So so that brings me to my next question. Forgive me for asking this. If you want to ask it, you can. If you don't want to, it's fine. But what was your relationship with Baker Mayfield like? Because I think there's a misconception that you guys didn't get along.
No, well, I mean, obviously because of the way he acted, that's what people believe. I never had a bad relationship with Baker. I was shocked by the things I saw too.
Yeah.
You got to remember, I brought in a new offensive coordinator. I did not coach the offense.
Right.
I was really involved with the defense. There was 2 coaches on that staff. One of them left when I left. The other one became the head coach. So I'll let you figure it out from there. Okay?
Yeah.
So my thing is that it's just people become, again, and in credit to Baker, I will say this. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, won a ton of games at Oklahoma. He walks into this organization that was 1-31. Okay. And he's looking at the head coach and going, God dang, man, you're 1-31. I just won a Heisman Trophy and I won a lot of games. You ain't won nothing. I'm just talking about what's going through his head.
Right.
And he probably doesn't know, and probably to this day still doesn't know what kind of offensive coach he had, because I never really coached him. So in his mind, it was like, well, these guys are coaching me. These guys are telling me what I need to know. I'm getting this from them. But as a head coach, I never had a problem with him.
So you hired an offensive coordinator. We're not going to mention the name. You hired an offensive coordinator out there who, let's just say he ruffles a lot of feathers where he goes. I mean, with Pittsburgh Steelers, he had a rocky relationship with Ben Roethlisberger. Again, not mentioning any names, but I've got to ask you, was that your decision?
It was. Yes, I was part of the decision to bring him in. I mean, I'll tell you why. I interviewed 8 other coordinators for the job, and I could not find a guy that I thought in those interviews that could do it better. If I'm going to hire somebody, I want them to be quality. They got to be better than me, was going to bring something that was going to be different to make the organization better. When you looked at Todd Haley, I'll say his name. What he did in Pittsburgh
I love it.
What he did in Pittsburgh was awesome. Okay. But what happened is he had other thoughts once he got there. And that's what happens to people. You know, they start all of a sudden it becomes something else that they want as opposed to what they told you that they wanted. You know,
Right.
So I'm pretty straight guy. I call it like I see it.
Right.
I tell people up front what I want and how I want it. And all of a sudden that's not what it was.
Okay. All right. So since we're being straight shooter, coach, I know you told me John Dorsey. John Dorsey, what was that like? What was that relationship like? Because I'll tell you what I thought, coach, right? Me being a lifelong Bengals fan, me wanting to see you succeed, and I wanted to see you succeed even if you were with Cleveland. I genuinely wanted to see you succeed because the city of Cincinnati loves you. But I got it. Do you think you got a fair shake with John Dorsey as general manager?
No, I don't.
I don't think so either.
And I'll leave it at that. I will say this. The guy was extremely talented in finding players. I will say this, all talent doesn't fit everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes people want to put people on a team and plug them into a hole. It just doesn't work that way. You know, it's got to be the right fit at the right time. I think he's very talented as a evaluator.
Yeah.
I don't think it was done fairly. No. At all. No.
Coach, that brings me to one of the questions that I had. Obviously, you did not have adequate quarterback play for your first 2 years. Let's just set the record straight. You did not have adequate quarterback play. I think that's one of the reasons why you definitely got brought back for your 3rd year. And you guys were pretty competitive in the first couple of games. Some people could argue you could have started 4-1, tons of overtime games. I think it was 4 overtime games. So were you blindsided or surprised at all with being let go at that point in the year after building up some momentum with a new rookie quarterback, a new offense? Were you blindsided or surprised at all?
Jake, absolutely I was. And I think I've gone on record and said that because we have been in 4 overtime games. It was a new team. What I was most disappointed about myself was the offense because I think we wouldn't have been in 4 overtime games. I thought we would have won more games that year. And that was my fault. So I take responsibility for that. But at the same time, I thought it was a little premature because I had paid the price for whatever it was for the first 2 years.
Right.
Then let me finish this. You know, give me every opportunity to clear my name from whatever that was so that I have an opportunity to move forward.
You're good, Malik.
Okay, there was a question that one of our writers here at TWSN, Sean Schwanabroff, wanted me to ask you specifically. He says, with how Anthony Lynn right now is struggling over in Los Angeles, we all can see that right now. How many one-score games have we seen the Los Angeles Chargers lose? He was wondering with how bad Anthony Lynn is struggling. And the controversy around minority coaches in the league. Do you think he's hurting minority candidates that are potentially up for head coaching jobs in the league, or do you think that's a ridiculous take?
No, I don't think he's hurting
Right.
minority coaches. I mean, if anybody hurt minority coaches, it was me. And I dang sure wasn't trying to hurt minority coaches. That's why I brought so many minorities on my staff to give them opportunities. But I think we all have to understand. This is the 100-year history of the National Football League. There's only been 18 minority head coaches in the history of the National Football League. Now, Anthony Lynn has a really good job. He's coaching in San Diego. Unbelievable weather, unbelievable team, good young quarterback. Sometimes it just doesn't go well.
Right.
Sometimes decisions you make just doesn't pan. So, and that happens in life to all of us, so he's not a bad coach.
Right.
He wouldn't have had the job if he was a bad coach. Something just didn't happen the way it should. It doesn't make him any less than a coach. I think he's got to find a way to get his team back to playing like they can. Now, obviously they just won this past week, but anytime a minority coach doesn't win, it is really hard for other minorities for the simple fact, and it's not his fault. It's just, that's the way it's been. And that's what people say is normal, but that's not right. What's normal is not right. And that's what people have to understand. I mean, just because he's losing doesn't make him. Are you kidding me? I mean, what it is something. He got some injuries. Here's I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on.
Things happen, yeah. And narratives can switch, right?
Yeah.
There's this narrative out there, for instance, like with Marvin Lewis. I go back to Marvin Lewis because you guys are best friends, right? You guys have a relationship. And there was a narrative out there once that, Marvin Lewis is hurting minority candidates. I didn't believe that. And I think I said, 2015 looks different. 2005 looks different. We'll be speaking. Marvin Lewis would still be the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals right now. My point is my point right now. Right. So I think that I think that there's a misconception, like coaching, right? Sean McVay in the Los Angeles Rams, for instance, did they make the playoffs last year?
No,
I don't think they did. Right? Are you hearing him as a bad coach?
No.
It happens.
That's what I'm saying. It gets. I mean, the bias that gets put out there when it comes to the minority coaches and the Asian coaches is just totally different. And you just alluded. I mean, I don't mean any harm, but Zach Taylor is not Marvin Lewis.
Right.
I mean, let's just be honest. I'm not mad at it. I think Zach's a good person. I have no problem with that. But he took over for Marvin. Marvin, I think we won 6 games the last time he was there.
Big shoes to fill.
And so you look at this and it hasn't gotten any better.
Right.
So people should now start to understand what kind of coach Marvin is. Let me take you to the Detroit Lions. Are you kidding me? Jim Caldwell is 9-7. And they bring a guy in, they said, because basically 9-7 wasn't good enough. And all of a sudden, Jim Caldwell's sitting at home. It's so many guys that have been through this. And to me, the conversation or the narratives, as you mentioned, Malik, that get put out there for minority coaches, we all have to dig into some of these sometimes. So you look in Cincinnati, and I can speak to Cincinnati that, boy, Marvin Lewis gets let go. They bring in this new coach. I interviewed for the job. There's several of us that interviewed for the job. I know one of the biggest thing with me is, Hugh, how do we sell your record? Well, how do you sell the record now? Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the players got to play for people. That's what they do.
Marvin said something a long time ago, and it stuck with me to this day. He said, you get rid of coaches. You swap coaches in and out, and then it's ultimately up to the players. At some point, the players have to play, and then you start getting rid of players. And that's the bottom line. We've got a couple of questions that I want to get to you by some of these, some of the people in the comment section. I know we have you till 7:15, but so some of the questions I want to ask you. Somebody asked, what do you think of the current state of the Bengals organization? What do you think is the current state? And the next question is, are you surprised with how Zach Taylor has struggled?
I'm surprised at how he struggled because I think there was a nucleus of players there that knew how to win.
Yeah.
The current state is obviously not a good one. I think when a lot of stuff starts coming out of the locker room, it's never good. I mean, that's just my opinion. That's a man's opinion. I just think those things are never good because every coach stands up in front of his team and says, what goes on here stays here. And what goes on here when it starts all coming out, that means that's not good. That means the respect or trust or whatever it is that we talked about earlier has been lost. And so if you sometimes when you lose it, you can never get it back. And that would be concerning to me.
A question that I was asked here, another question for you is, do you think the Bengals would ever consider bringing you back?
I don't know. I mean, I know I have tremendous relationships there in the organization. I think, if something was to happen, I do believe that they would talk to me because of the relationships I have. But I mean, like I said, it's a place I'm very fond of. It's a place that I know.
We're fond of you.
And there's people there that I know extremely well.
Absolutely. You guys want to get
here?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Matthew. You go.
Okay, just a quick one. I know you kind of touched on the lack of cohesiveness in the front office during your time in Cleveland. Would you say you have any regrets, regardless of the situation?
No.
I love it.
No, there's no way. And someday, Max, when my book comes out, you'll understand that.
Love it.
Somebody asked me a question to ask you. It's the elephant in the room. Marvin Lewis. There has been speculation that Marvin Lewis is going to return to the NFL.
Hey, that's pretty good speculation.
It's pretty good speculation, I would say, right?
Really?
Now the one, and the question is, right? If Marvin Lewis lands, let's say with the Detroit Lions, for instance, could we see Hue Jackson return to the sideline if asked as an offensive coordinator?
Absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, if Marvin is willing to give me that opportunity, I'd take it tomorrow because it's with somebody I trust, somebody I know, and I know he would give me every opportunity that I could to take an offense and make it special.
Absolutely.
Coach, I have a quick question. I know a lot of our viewers want to know a little bit more about what goes on inside of an organization. How much sway does a head coach really have in drafting players or getting talent in free agency? How much sway does a coach really have?
Let me say this to everybody. If it's not in your contract, you have none. Okay. If it's decided that the GM's going to have that sway, then the GM will. It's just everybody's different. Every situation is set up different. And it's really interesting to me. And that's what I think. I don't think people go because these narratives, as Malik said earlier, they get said. And so people just roll with them. I'm just going to take you through a situation in Cleveland. So I come to Cleveland as a head coach, a quarterback guy. I'm there. We have a guy who's a GM, who's an attorney. We have another guy who's in the front office, who's a former baseball guy, right? Let's just be honest.
Right.
And so when you draft quarterbacks, the first thing everybody would think is that I drafted him. Hugh's the head coach. He's an offensive guy.
Right.
Well, I would say go look through the fine print and see who made the decisions on draft. So nobody wants to do that. So, but everybody kept saying, well, Hugh takes this guy. Why does he take this guy? Well, maybe Hugh didn't take the guy.
Right.
So people have to really understand. I'm using that as an example, and it's a real example, but I'm just saying people got to really look. And that's why I say what is right, what is normal might not be right. People are this looks normal to us. This looked like, boy, it had to be the coach that drafted these particular quarterbacks. It had to be this guy that did that. Well, make sure you know it for a fact before you start commenting and understanding, because once that narrative starts, then people just grab on it and they just keep it going.
Right.
And away it goes.
So, Coach, I'm gonna play a role right now. Okay. And I want you to be Hue Jackson, of course. I'm an NFL owner, and I say, Hugh, we want to bring you in for an interview. We have a bad football team. We have 2 wins on the season. I'm kidding. I have a bad football team. What does Hue Jackson bring to the table? Why should Hue Jackson be the next head coach of said team? Go.
Because he brings experience. He brings know-how offensively.
Mhm.
He's seen it when it's been really good. He's
Yeah.
seen it when it's been really bad. He understands collaboration. He understands alignment, and he has a vision. And I'm going to show you and explain to you my vision of what winning looks like in the National Football League. And I truly believe that if you go and look at my history, you'll see that I've had players that have played extremely well for me. Players that's not even playing right now in the National Football League. I've made my name by taking guys who people thought maybe wasn't great players and having them play really well. Terrell Pryor being one.
Housing our receiver, right?
Yeah, and Darius Hayward Bay at Oakland. So it's just there's so many guys like that, and I truly believe that I have a better understanding of what it takes on a weekly, daily basis for a team to be special.
You get the job. We're going to announce you to the organization. This has been awesome, man. I truly hope to have you on the show again someday.
Sure.
This was honestly awesome. I mean, like I said, I really think that you gave people an in-depth look at it exactly, from your time with the Raiders, time with the Bengals to your time with the Browns. And I think that you answered a lot of questions that some people still would have. But like I said, I've always thought the world of you. I still think the world of you. I can't wait to see you coaching on the sideline, and I'm hoping that the season 2021, whether it's as a head coach or an offensive coordinator or wherever, you've been a special assistant to the head coach. You've done everything in the NFL. Yeah. You've been everything. I truly.
First of all, I want to thank all of you guys, and I, from the bottom of my heart, I want Cincinnati to get back to where they were, because the AFC North is not fun when Cincinnati's not winning.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of fun when they were winning, and there were some great times there, and there were some great players that graced the halls there. So I truly believe that Mike Brown, who's very near and dear to my heart, deserves an opportunity to watch his team compete in the playoffs and see if they can go win a Super Bowl. And more so than that quarterback that they have on their football team, I think he's special.
Joe Burrow, yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that young man's special, and I think if they truly build it around him, then I think great things are going to happen in Cincinnati.
Do you think this bothers? I mean, of course it bothers him. Do you think he sits by for another year on this one?
I'm sorry?
Do you think he sits by another year? Because a lot of times people compare, the Zach Taylor tenure early on to Marvin Lewis, and I said Marvin Lewis started off 8-8 its first 2 seasons. Third season he had them winning the division title. From a guy who knows him. Do you think Mike Brown? Everybody's like, oh, he's patient. He's patient. Do you think he'll be patient with this one, or do you think he'll?
I think patience for the organization is running thin a little bit because Mike's getting older.
Yeah.
And I think he knows what he had before. And I don't care what nobody says. Owners, coaches, fans, they like to win.
Yeah.
And they want to win. You don't do this to lose.
Absolutely.
Trust me, nobody does. We're not built to lose.
Right.
Let's be honest. Nobody's built. You're losing all. Nobody wants to do that. So I just think at some point in time, either he sees a future where things are going to get real better real fast, or you have to make it better.
I think they can win something with Joe at quarterback, definitely. Hugh, I want to make sure I mention, check out, it's in the description as well, check out Hue Jackson's Tequila company, Gran Leyenda Tequila. I mean, I don't drink necessarily, but still, I want to support my man Hugh, so I might buy myself a bottle, give it to my father. I also want you guys to check out the Hue Jackson Foundation, where, Hugh, you can tell them about your foundation.
Yeah, the foundation, we are involved with human trafficking. We have a residence there in Cleveland at the Harbor Light District. We partner with the Salvation Army, and we house victims of human trafficking. We're trying to make a huge impact on this unbelievable deal that's just humanity. It's just against everything I truly believe in. And we're working at that. And as you mentioned, the Tequila company, but more so than that, we're truly about trying to help people be the best.
I love it, Hugh. I'm gonna have to send you out a TWSN face mask, man. You've been awesome to have on the show. I'm serious, man. I mean, we're definitely me. We'll talk offline about that definitely. But guys, make sure you follow Hugh. Coach is on. I believe he's on Twitter as well. You can definitely follow him and keep up with all the great things that he's doing. And I can't wait to see him back on the sideline. Guys, make sure you download the TWSN mobile app. Thank you guys for tuning in to the TWSN podcast show. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, guys. And it's been a blast. This is probably one of the best shows that we've done here. But as always, guys, we will see you next week, and the show will go on.
I ain't gon' give up the game.